voice in my head that I know so well.
All right, today joining us is Krystina Pacheco. She is a wife, mother, and a quadruple amputee. I am super honored to have her as our first guest of Wine, Weights, and Whey and talk about all things motherhood, postpartum, and healing from trauma. Hey, Krystina.
Hi, how are you?
Doing great. We are so excited to hear your story and just get to chat. So I'll let you take it away wherever you want to start.
Okay. So, my name is Krystina Pacheco, like she said, and same thing that I want to reiterate. I'm a mom, I'm a wife, and something unique to my story that's brought a lot of attention, like on social media and things like that, has been my journey as a quadruple amputee. And I think what really sparks and interests a lot of people in my story is that how I'm continuing to just live my life as a mom and a wife and a daughter, and just my family and friends, and how I'm supported really interests people, and how I'm just continuing to live life despite the disability that has been just sprung on us after a tragic event. And just kind of speaking about that tragic event, it all started like a story. It all started 2.5 years ago. I gave birth to our second born, which is our daughter, and her name's Amelia. And everything throughout the pregnancy had gone great. Everything from doctor's visits, checkups, even up until the day of giving birth, everything throughout my C-section went beautifully. Everything after the C-section, right after, went beautifully. It wasn't until about the third day in the hospital that I really started feeling symptoms where I questioned, but I also I would say I didn't question enough. And my husband and I we're in the education system, and we don't really know much about the medical field. We don't know much about what is right, what is wrong, in terms of medical practices and things like that. But um, the third day, I started experiencing some pain where my IV was put on my left forearm. And I told the nurse, the morning nurse, and I was like, hey, I'm experiencing some pain with my left forearm. It's starting to hurt. It's getting a little bit like hot to the touch, and it's getting a little splotchy. And she was like, oh, yeah, let me just take your IV out. So she was like, oh, let me just take the IV out. I took a little nap, and then when I woke up, I started feeling feverish. I started feeling chills, and I told her, I'm feeling fever, I'm feeling chills. I just feel like I'm coming down with like a cold or a flu, like chills and flu-like symptoms. And she's like, okay, let me just give you some Motrin, and you should be fine. And I said, okay.
Did
So
they show any concern with that? Because I've had a C-section myself, two of them, and that's infection is such a strong concern. Did you feel like they were writing you off, or that they were listening to your concerns?
Yeah, and I think that's the big part of my story is the neglect and just like the disregard for patient symptoms, the disregard for my symptoms, the disregard for not treating me diligently, not treating me not purposefully, but not treating me appropriately as well. And
Sure.
they just kind of gave it off as like, oh, she's just feeling kind of feverish. Let me just give her some Motrin.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had had a C-section with my son as well. So I had already gone through a C-section. And
Hmm.
so maybe I just thought in that moment, I'm like, oh, well, if it was something big, they would tell me. And I think we as a society, and even maybe as an age group or a generation, and even generations before us, we've always been taught like you have to trust your medical practitioners, you have to trust doctors and what they say. They're the professionals. You're respectful to them. And I think generations after us are
Yeah.
getting a
And
lot
don't
better about.
question.
Right. And
Yeah.
generations after us are getting a lot better about, asking questions and making sure they're accounted for and so that accountability, they're actually holding people accountable. And
Yeah.
I think it's our generations and everywhere and everyone before us are were just not raised that way. So
Yeah.
um and also I've also read statistics that women of color, Hispanic
Yes.
women, Native American women, Indian, African American, that were more likely to get written off almost, I guess you would say, or disregarded or neglected, especially after giving birth. So
Yes.
maternal,
Which is the most dangerous time in a woman's life is postpartum.
exactly,
But that
postpartum.
feels like one of the times that you get wrote off the most, and especially women of color.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I've seen the statistics and it's just crazy how women of color are the most prone to sepsis and infections after because of not being appropriately treated and not being
Yeah.
treated quickly as well. So part of my story is because of that, is that, I wasn't taken seriously when it came to my symptoms. And throughout that last day at the hospital, my forearm just kept hurting. It started getting more red. It started getting hotter to the touch. It started getting kind of splotchy around the IV area. And they never questioned it. They never asked like, well, was there something weird when they put your IV in? Was there, they just kind of were like, oh, well, let's just put a cold compress on it. Oh, well, let's just treat your fever symptoms. And finally, like when we were getting closer to being discharged, she said, you know what, I'm not liking the way that arm is looking. Let me get the doctor. Finally, all day I had gone without seeing a physician, and finally when it's something important, I guess to her
Yeah.
was finally it was important enough to bring a physician in. She said, I think he's going to order a sonogram. And the physician came in, the sonogram tech, they did the sonogram. He was like, oh, you just have a thrombus, you just have a blood clot. And
Mm.
in my head I'm like, just a blood clot, so what does that mean? Am I okay? Am I
Yeah.
not? Do we need to stay? Do we need to go? Like, what's going on? And so he was like, you should be fine, honey baby. You're fine. You're good to go. And yeah, your face.
Yeah, you saw my
Yeah.
face.
Yes, exactly my reaction. And I remember telling my husband that day, I said, who does this guy think, all these hormones, but on top of
Yeah.
that, like, who does this guy think he is? I've never met
Well, it
him,
sounds condescending.
exactly. And my doctor also never went and checked on me. So like my physician that actually did the C-section and was took care of me all throughout my pregnancy never went and checked on me any of those days after
Mm.
delivering my baby. And so I thought that alone was kind of weird, but then there's this guy
Yeah.
comes and tells me honey baby and is being condescending and kind of just like blew off my symptoms. But, my husband and I, like I said, we're not physicians, so we really didn't know what was appropriate. It was, no, not in that sense, but what was
Yeah.
medically
When to question and
Right. What was medically appropriate? If they're saying, I'm going to be okay, you trust that the medical professional is telling you you're going to be okay. It's fine. You know, you
And
can
that's
go
how they
home.
discharged you that way?
Yes.
Did they give you anything to look for? Like, hey, if this starts
You know, they give you
looking
the
like
discharge,
this, or
the
yeah.
discharge instructions, but those are geared towards a C-section. And I was
Mhm.
not feeling any symptoms of my C-section. You know, even during my hospital stay, I was complaining more about forearm pain than I was about my C-section pain. And, you know, like you said, you've gone through C-sections, they're a major surgery. You're
Yeah.
being cut open, layers are being cut open, and you're delivering a whole baby, and you're being sewn up. And I was complaining of more pain from my arm from where an IV was placed, which are done all the time. You know,
Yeah.
IVs are placed all the time. And I was, you know, complaining about more pain about that than I was about delivering my child via C-section. And so we were given discharge instructions, but all of that was tailored towards my C-section. And so I guess we kind of just was like, okay, well, if he says we're good to go, then we're good to go. They, you know, signed us off. The doctor came and looked at it. So, you know, we thought they were doing their due diligence. You know, he came and looked at it. We're fine. We can go.
Yeah.
And I, you know, we got in the car, we were happy, obviously, because we were about to go start our new life. I had a 2-year-old at home, a toddler who was ready to, you know, be with his baby sister. And
Yeah.
we were ready to get our little family started with our daughter. And so the next day, I remember, you know, food started kind of tasting funny to me. I was starting to lose my taste. By the nighttime, the next day, I couldn't lie down anymore. I was starting to develop a lot of pain under my rib cage. So I started sleeping on the couch. And I was like, well,
Mhm.
maybe it's all just soreness from the C-section, and I should be fine. And I think, you know, talking about women as well, we tend to put off pain thresholds, and you know, we have really high pain tolerance, and we tend to put off big symptoms that are probably
Yeah.
huge that we should probably be paying more attention to. But we as women
Mhm.
try to like push through the pain, you know, push through the pain. You can do this, you can keep going, you can do this, we could grab this. And we try not to ask for help or be more independent
Yeah.
as much as we can be. And so I think that's kind of what I was doing, as like, okay, well, you know, you just had a baby, you're gonna have to take care of her whether you like it or not. And whether you're hurting or not. And you know, my partner is great. He, you know, he would jump in and help out when he could, but when it came to like feeding and things like that, I wanted to breastfeed. So the next day was, we had our daughter on Monday, October 24th, and so this was already Friday, October 28th. And I told my husband, I said, something's really wrong. I can feel my body. I know what I felt after having our son from what I'm feeling right now, and this is something completely different. I couldn't hold down food. I was vomiting. I had diarrhea. I was really sweaty, and this was, you know, getting near November, so the temperature outside wasn't where we would be sweating inside.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like summertime in Texas. It was getting towards November, and I was sweating. I remember taking about 2, 3 showers because I was sweating so much. The pain under my rib cage had heightened to a point to where I knew something was really wrong. So
Had you
I
called in to the
emergency.
emergency?
No. So what I first did was I said, let me make an appointment for urgent care. And so he was like, yeah, whatever you need to do, like, let's go to urgent care. So we called our sister-in-law, was like, hey, you know, she's not feeling really good. Can you come take care of the baby? And um, our son was still at daycare. So we called my mother-in-law, like, hey, can you pick up our son? Because we're going to urgent care right now. She's not feeling good. And so at urgent care, when I got there, when they finally called me back, I couldn't even lie down on the table. I was in so much pain, and it was excruciating pain that when I lie down, I was just crying from how much pain I was in. And the physician who was at urgent care, he was like, you know what, something's wrong for you to be in that much pain. Something's worse is wrong. So I think you need to go to the emergency room at the hospital. And I said, okay. So we drove to the hospital, and we have a local hospital. So we live in a smaller town, but we live south of San Antonio, where that's where I had given birth. But at the smaller hospital in our town, they have an emergency room there, and I was able to, tell them my symptoms. They took my vitals, and once they took my vitals, they brought me back to a room right away. So what they noticed was that my blood pressure was extremely low and my heart rate was really high. And, the doctor, once he came in, he just told my husband, your wife is really sick. We really don't know what's going on with her. Y'all are going to have to go to the emergency room where she gave birth in San Antonio. But there's no, I don't know if they're trying to like maybe cushion the blow, but they're like, there's no ambulances right now. We're going to have to air life her, maybe to not make us feel as scared. Or there really wasn't ambulances available, but I think it was crucial to where they had to air life me.
Get you quickly. Yeah.
Get me there quickly, because it's about an hour drive to the San Antonio hospital where I gave birth. So they had to air life me. In a 20-minute helicopter ride, I was there. But in that moment, I just remember feeling, first of all, scared, just scared and anxious, because I don't know what's going on with me. Physicians don't know what's going on with me. We have 2 babies at home.
Yeah.
When am I going to get back to them?
Brand new baby.
Right. When am I going to see them? And I never thought it was going to be 2 weeks later. And sorry, that part's always hard to think about.
No, I should have known to get tissues before this one.
Yeah. So they airlifted me to the hospital where I gave birth at, and they started pushing medicines. They started taking me back for imaging, and I remember lying in the MRI table, and I could barely lie there without wailing and crying and screaming in pain, because I was just like, it was almost like my whole body on the inside was just burning. And that's how I can kind of explain to what it felt like. And when they started pushing medications, what those medications were, their purpose was to try to get my heart rate down and try to get my blood pressure back up. And what those medications are called, they're called vasopressors. And what that does, it starts to pull the blood supply to your extremities, and it starts to try to push that blood back to your organs. So at that time, when I was in all that pain, I didn't know it at the time. And until they got that imaging, they didn't know it at that time. But I was going through sepsis. I was going into septic shock, and my organs were shutting down. And from that night when we got there on the when I was air life there to the next morning, I had gone completely down. I was put into a medically induced coma. They put me in a breathing tube. The last thing I remember my husband saying was, you have to fight. You have to fight, Christina. You can't leave me here with 2 babies. You can't leave me here,
That's so scary.
Raising them by myself. I can't do this without you. And at that moment, I'm just like trying to come back, and I'm trying to breathe. And it was so scary, because I thought I was dying. And that's one of the last things I remember.
Did you know, were you cognizant of, I'm going into a coma?
It was explained to me, but I think a lot of things were just starting. I was kind of in and out of it at that point because of the pain, because my body was shutting down. And so I was almost like, I knew it, but I didn't realize that's what it was going to feel like. It felt like I was dying, and it was getting harder for me to breathe when they were putting the breathing tube in, because once that's placed, the machine starts to do the function for you, and
Sure.
or at least help your lungs do the function. And that next morning, what they did is they called another hospital, and that hospital is known for their ECMO machines, and it's called ECMO. And what that does is that it also does the function of your heart and your lungs. So it kind of rotates the blood in your body to start fighting that infection and start getting your blood supply to go back to your heart, and tries to, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah. You're good.
Tries to get that organ to start working again, so your heart and your lungs. When I was in that medically induced coma, they also put me on a continuous dialysis machine because my kidneys were starting to fail. So little by little, during those 2 weeks that I was in a medically induced coma, they started loosening. It's called a clamp. They had a clamp that kind of like let my heart start to do little by itself again. And
Sure.
once they tested, like, okay, she's doing better. Okay, she's doing better. Okay, she's doing more on her own. Then they were able to take me off the ECMO machine and kind of start getting me out of the coma little by little.
So you were in the
Well,
coma for 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Wow.
And
And when they
from,
started to bring you back, how long did it take for you to come back to?
I want to say about 5. So like once I was halfway awake, I want to say like another 2, 3 days it took me to get like fully awake and cognizant. And even at that point, I still had my breathing tube in. So that was even another feeling of itself, because I couldn't even talk. And I still had the breathing tube in. I had to like kind of mouth it to my husband and my family. I'm sorry. And they were like trying to like, so are you saying this is this, like, are you questioning this, or you're like trying to ask this question? And I'm like, and so I couldn't even speak to them. And every day that I was in the medically induced coma, my husband would ask the doctors, so like, what are her chances? What are her chances today? And when it all had first happened, he said there was doctors who were ready to walk out. There was doctors who were ready to throw in the towel, give up. There's ready to tell me there's nothing we can do. And then there was doctors who knew, I mean, knew you were a mom, you had a newborn baby, you had a toddler at home, and they fought. And he said they fought really hard, and those are the ones that were just
Well, thank God for them.
Yes, exactly. And thank God for, people tell me like, this is why we hate physicians and nurses and, people in the medical field. They're all just liars and blah, blah. And I'm like, no. I'm like, it's just finding the right ones. It's just finding the ones
Yeah.
that are willing to fight, right? And they're the ones who care about their patients the most. And sadly, they're the ones you see the most because they're always at the hospital, and they have their own families. And but there's those people that are just born to do that. And those are definitely some of the doctors that I had and nurses, because I was taken care of. Like, even after I woke up, there was nurses who just like, when they would walk in, I'm like, oh, thank God you're my nurse today. Like, I'm just so happy. Like, we became great friends with some of those nurses. And so, there's just, I guess in our mind, you just can't lose faith right away. And that's a big lesson that we've learned from all of this, is that you can't lose faith. You have to stay grateful. You have to stay positive. And that's a big one that I think a lot of people praise my husband for, is staying positive, because every time they would talk to him or they would see him, and he would say like, she's doing better today, that's great, and not seeing the negative side of it. And it's like, well, if her losing her limbs, because that also came into play, that means her having her life and me having her means her losing her limbs, then I'd rather have her. And she can get prosthetics. She can, she's tough. She's, and it's like,
So they
wow,
knew
so a lot
that
of people.
that was possibly an option while you were in the coma. Were they
Yes.
telling him that while you were?
Yeah. A lot of, not a lot of people, not everyone, but a lot of people who do suffer sepsis or go into septic shock or a bacterial infection to where they have to press that medication, the vasopressors, or put it in ECMO, end up losing that circulation to their extremities. And sometimes it's just one, sometimes it's one in one, or in other cases like mine, it's all four. So when I was under or in that medically induced coma, they saw my hands and my feet starting to go black. And when I woke up, they were still black. And I had PTs and OTs who would come into my room and, still work with me. And can you wiggle your fingers today? Can you wiggle your toes today? And little by little. And in my head, when I woke up, I never even knew that was an option. They hadn't spoken to me about that yet.
Yeah.
So, and then I see these PTs and OTs coming into the room and working with me, and I'm like, okay, so this is gonna go away. This is gonna get better. I didn't know the blood supply had completely died. And I thought because, I can still wiggle my fingers, I can still wiggle my toes, I can kind of move my feet, and I thought there's still a chance for them to save my limbs until the next month. It was a week before Thanksgiving of 2022, and that's when my plastic surgeon came in and said, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to amputate all four of your limbs. And she's a great woman. She's awesome, but this is a story that my husband and I, still talk about today. She's so smart, and usually the smartest physicians are the ones who lack the most bedside manner.
Yeah.
And it's just a thing, and I don't know why. And I'm like, y'all are so smart, but sometimes like your social skills are like
Emotionally,
yeah, that emotional, that empathetic side, and just the type of person I am. I mean, I see like a puppy sometimes, I'm like, oh, it's so cute, I'm crying, and so I'm like, that situation. My husband had walked out of the room. He went to go get us some food, and then my nurse had stepped out as well, and my physician kind of like slithered in, and she was like, she broke the news, you're gonna have to have all four amputations. And I was wailing, I was crying, and my husband
you were alone?
was just, yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was she thinking? Like, did she
exactly. I don't know. Like, God bless her. Like, to this day, I'm like, you're the best doctor I've ever met. And I know she loves me, and I know she takes care of me, and she loves my kids. But in that situation, I'm like, what was she thinking? Like, I don't know if she
Well, you
was
have a lot of empathy for her to be able
right.
to
Yes, I do.
see
And
past that.
yes. And I think it's because I know she feels like she knows, not she feels, but I know she knows she did wrong in that situation, and she felt so bad. And I think almost to where I could explain, I think what was happening is that she was probably just ready to break my heart almost, or like just, deliver the news. And you like pump yourself up, and you almost pump yourself up to where you just have to like go and do it no matter what and not wait.
Yeah.
So I think that's what happened. And sorry, my dog's here. He missed us.
Oh, we love
He's a big old golden
so
doodle.
Ah,
He wants to be in the
jealous.
podcast. He knew I was crying.
So sweet. Hey, puppers.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. So I think, in that moment, I think she was just ready to deliver the news. And my husband comes back in, and he had just brought our food, and he was like, what's wrong? Why is she crying? Like, what's happening? What happened? And she said, like, I gave her the news. And he was like, what? Like, his face just dropped. And I've never seen my husband like see red before, and I'm pretty sure like that's the first time and only time I've ever
Rightfully
really
so.
seen him see red. And he was livid. He was like, how dare you deliver that news to her, like without me, without anybody
Yeah,
here,
without a support system.
without anybody. You know, she knows my parents, she knew his parents, she knows my husband, she knows what all of my family looks like. And so she did it without anybody there. And so he was livid, and he even complained to the chief of surgery and said like, your physician did went and told my wife the news and without anybody there, and made her cry and made her feel bad. And you know, just that's just unethical and just unempathetic and just all the things. And she apologized. She came into my room and apologized to me. And I was in that moment, it was almost hard to even see. I wasn't even mad at that situation, really. My husband was more, because it hurt me. But in that moment, I
Yeah.
was more hurt about the news that was just delivered to me. And
Yeah.
all the things start going through your mind. I was like, how am I going to be a mom without hands? How am I going to be a mom without feet? How am I going to walk? How am I going to get up? How am I going to feed my baby, make them something to eat, get them something from the fridge? How am I going to comb my baby girl's hair? How am I going to do her hair? How am I going to do
Yeah.
anything? And at that moment, all I saw was defeat. I just thought, I was ready to give up almost. And I guess that's the best way to put it, is I was
Yeah.
just ready to give up. I didn't know why I was, I guess, given a second chance at life, if this is how it was going to be. Um,
Yeah, well,
and
that's, you have to go through a process, because I mean, to
right,
go
yeah,
from healthy one minute to losing all four, that's, I can't imagine the mental
heartbreak.
process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's almost like the stages of grief that you feel when you lose a loved one. I mean,
Yeah.
losing part of yourself that you were born with, it's another type of grief that you go through, and you don't know really what it feels like until it happens to you. And even other people that I talk to who are also amputees, you know, even their situations and their stories are all different. But
Mm-hmm.
we all still feel that same type of grief, feeling like we could be like our normal selves, or feel normal again, quote unquote normal. And you don't see the inside of what you have, and you know, the beauty of your brain, the beauty of your in who you are, your personality, none of that shines through in that moment for yourself. Everybody else says it. And
Yeah.
it's like when you go through like a breakup, and like, I see this guy for who he is, he's so bad to you, blah blah blah. But it's almost the things that you don't see it until you're out of it, and you don't see it until you're ready to see it. And
Removed. Yeah.
I think that's, you know, I think that's kind of what the amputee community preaches as well. Is like, you're not going to be okay until you're ready to, you know, move on and feel okay about your
Yeah.
amputation. And that could be years, that could be months, that could be, I don't think anybody takes days, because that would be hard. But
Yeah.
you know, it takes everybody a different amount of time to get through those things. And um I stayed in the hospital for 3 months, and then I was at an inpatient rehab for 2 weeks. And then I was in outpatient rehab, physical therapy and outpatient therapy, for about 10 months. So almost a year of
Wow.
just straight on therapy. Even in the hospital, I was receiving therapies. And from being released in February of 2023 to June of 2023 is when I received my prosthetics, and I was able to start working on walking. And I think that as well gave me a lot of, or not a lot of, I would say, but it gave me a glimmer of hope at that point,
Yeah.
because it's like, okay, I can get up now.
Regaining
If I need to,
something.
regaining that part of yourself, that independence.
Yeah.
Because there's things that my husband's had to do for me that I would never go back and wish for it to happen all over again. Now it's like, oh, you know, we've been through everything together.
Yeah.
But in that moment, it's like, my husband shouldn't be doing this for me. And I told my mom too, you know, she's done a lot for us. It's like, Mom, this should be the other way around. I should be taking care of you. You shouldn't be taking care of me. And so you feel guilty because it's like, you feel guilty that people are doing all these things for you. And
Yeah.
you also feel heartbroken because these are all things you used to be able to do by yourself. And so you lose your independence. You feel that guilt of having to ask for help. You feel lost because this is a whole new person. This is a whole new thing you have to deal with and get through and work through mentally as well. And then
Yeah.
all of that. And then you still have to be a mom.
On top of having a brand new baby.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, I can't, because that's
Yeah.
hard enough in itself is postpartum, but
Right.
your whole life to change in that time.
Right. And so it was a lot to get through. And I didn't really talk about my background, but when I was working and before the traumatic accident happened, I'm still working, but I'm a school psychologist. And so a lot of my background is in psychology, it's in therapy, it's in counseling. And, you know, I think a lot of that had to do a big part of my recovery and, you know, just the mental health of it all. And I think we're getting better as a society as well as talking about mental health, and it's so real. And especially for moms alone, everything that is just thrown on top of us, on top of our hormones being in a like almost like a blender, like just all over the place. And they're just, you know, everywhere postpartum, during pregnancy, you don't get back to your normal self, they say, until about 2 years after your pregnancy and even after postpartum. And so
And that's without trauma.
Excuse me, right. I'm sorry. And exactly, that's without trauma dumped on top of that. And so I knew there was something that I had to do when it started to become a point where I could hardly, you know, even get out of bed. It started becoming to a point where I would just wake up and just start crying for like an hour straight, it felt like. And at that point, I knew I had to do something to kind of get me out of it. And I started therapy, counseling therapy. So it's not only I'm doing OT, I'm doing PT, and now I'm doing counseling. And that's just 1 hour every week. But even then, it helped me just like release a lot of the things that I didn't want to dump onto my family as well.
Sure.
Because in that moment as well, and I'm sure a lot of caretakers and people who are caretakers, even if they're elderly parents, excuse me, they feel that. And it's if here I am giving one more thing that I have to give my mom to take on or give my husband to take on, like, how's that fair to them? And so that's also when I knew I wanted to also go to therapy and talk to someone else who had very neutral, had nothing to do with, you know, anything of what I've gone through, has no recollection or no history with me, anything like that. And no connection is what I was going to say, connection to what I've gone through, and just talk through those things. And if I'm having a bad day, if I'm having a good day, if I did a little win, that's a win. And I think that's when I started also counting my wins, is that when my therapist helped me see that, like, you got up today, that's a win. You could have stayed in bed. You brushed your hair, you put on a little bit of makeup today, that's a win. And I think that's kind of where my TikTok journey also started.
I was gonna ask. Yeah. That
speaking
is
of
something that
makeup,
I have been, I stalk your TikTok because I think it's
oh,
fantastic.
thank you.
I
See,
can
I'm so
barely I can barely do my makeup, and I'm
thank
fully
you.
abled, and I am
Yeah.
so impressed with. And so, is that something that kind of helped you feel like your normal self again?
Yes. And I guess I had never realized that I was like that much of a girly girl until I saw my daughter. And I'm raising my daughter who has to be a princess every single day and wear
Hmm.
makeup and do
I
glitter
have
and
one
all
of
this.
those.
I was like, oh, I guess I am a girly girl. Like I always thought I was
Yeah.
kind of tomboyish, but I guess I'm not. And so when I started posting like how I did my makeup and I started getting likes and then I put my story out there and people started commenting just like great things. I mean, along with good comments or bad comments too, but
Yeah.
there's always going to be trolls, but I started, I guess, liking that and finding a part of myself again and I started feeling beautiful again. And that's another thing that was taken away from me as well is, and
Yeah.
I also thought about when I learned about my amputations that I'm not going to look normal. I'm going to look different. People are going to look at me. People are going to stare at me. People are going to talk about me, point at me, laugh at me. I'm going to get all this backlash. And then when I put my story out there and started getting nothing but good, feedback, and that also just brought something some life back into me again and
Yeah.
started feeling self-confident again and started feeling like, okay, I can still look beautiful. Even if I don't have my hands, I can still look beautiful. Even if I wear prosthetics, I can still walk.
Oh yeah,
I can
you're
still,
gorgeous.
thank you. I can
I'm
dance.
obsessed with watching your makeup videos because I mean it really is just so impressive
Oh,
how
thank
well you do
you.
your makeup.
And I just watch like I'm just like self-taught from tutorials, like from other people's tutorials. So like I've just once I started practicing like holding my brushes and how to do this and how to do that and what products to buy and not to buy and just kind of like started building upon my collection. Like if you could see my vanity right now, you'd be amazed. I
Yeah.
need to do like a vanity tour one day and but just, you know, I know those things. Some people think, like, man, people are so vain when they're so materialistic or when they have all these things for beauty and things like that. But to someone like myself, I see it more as like if that makes me feel beautiful and that makes me feel happy, and if when I feel beautiful, I feel happier, if I have a better day just because I put on makeup or did my hair or did my skincare, then that's good, for me. And that's
Yeah.
going to make me happier. And that me being happier is going to make me a better mom. Being a better mom is going to make me a better wife. And just that ripple effect is, again, I think it's all just connected to my mentality and my mental health and coming full circle from something so tragic and just changing your whole mentality is I was given a second chance at life because I'm meant to be my baby's mom. Like nobody in this world could ever. Sorry, I'm getting emotional about it.
No, that is okay because
Yeah,
oh
nobody in this world could have ever been their mom the way I am their mom, and I think they know that. They 100% know that because they're awesome babies. They're just like so resilient, and people ask me all the time, like, how do your babies react to you, and how do your babies perceive you, and do you think their perception of you has changed after everything? And I'm like, no, no, never. I would never think that like the way I look would impact them, and that's just because of the way they act around me. And maybe one day, when they get older, there's going to be kids that come around, maybe have questions. And we're in a smaller town, so a lot of people already know my story.
Yeah.
But, when they get older, if they're going to get bullied for something like that, I always want to have that open line of communication where if they're getting bullied over that, then I'll go speak to that kid and let them understand
Yeah.
why, what my story is and
Yeah.
why I'm going through this or why do I look like this. And um, in our community, I've also shed some light on, I'm sorry, national, what is it? Um, Amputee Awareness Month. I'm sorry, Amputation
Oh,
Awareness Month.
the limb
Limb Loss
difference,
Awareness
and
Month.
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah. Well, and that's one thing that I was really wanting to ask you also. So I have a 4-year-old who's very inquisitive,
Yes.
very, coming from the right place. What kind of conversation would you like to hear moms having with their kids about people with limb difference?
Yeah, that's a beautiful question. And I think it's more like when that situation comes across and then you have that conversation with them is mostly what happens to me. And
Mm-hmm.
um a lot of people approach it differently. Some are like, no, don't ask her, like, sorry, he's bothering you, blah blah blah. And I'm like, no, I love questions and I rather their kid ask me the question than them just like, oh, I wonder why that person looks different and them not know why. And
Yeah.
I always tell them like, no, let them ask me. It's okay. And then, the kid will their kid or their child will ask me like, what happened to you? And I like to explain to them, I got sick. In order to save my life, they had to take away my limbs. But even with this disability, I can do this and this and this and this. And I say, like, I can drive, I can cook food for my babies. I pick up my son from school. I take them to the splash pads. I take them to the pool. We go to the I drop my daughter off at daycare. We go to the movies together. There's still things that people with disabilities can do. And even if they look different, doesn't make them different inside. It still makes them human being. And just the way we don't treat others who look the same as us wrong or bully them for looking any different. That's what you'll do to people who with limb loss or, in a wheelchair with a disability. You always want to treat all human beings the same. Like just the way we treat people of all, shade ranges, skin tone ranges. We treat them the same as we treat each other with respect, with um being with kindness, being nice to them, saying hello if you want to. If you don't want to, you don't want to like push a person, even push a child beyond their boundaries or beyond their comfort zone. But even if that's just sending a smile their way, then do so. But knowing that even people with disabilities are human beings and they probably would like it if you go and ask them what happened or if you said hello or if you smiled at them, whatever you're comfortable with. But
Well, that's so
I'll,
good to know because I feel
yeah,
like in a moment of panic, might,
yeah,
don't,
yeah. A lot of parents and, a lot of parents will panic and they're like, oh my God, my kid's like, they're like staring at them and pointing at them and like,
yeah,
and I'll never feel uncomfortable as long as like they smile at me and even with adults. And I have to say, and parents, like, listen to this, like I feel more uncomfortable when adults stare at me than when kids do it because
yeah,
kids are actually a lot better at not than adults are. So
yeah.
parents were
And
doing
adults should know
something
better.
right. Right. So we're doing something right about teaching respect and, not like, don't stare. It's kind of rude or, and even
Yeah.
if they have, and that's, and if they're staring because they have a question. And I think that's different. So because a child is curious, they want to learn and even us as adults are, but adults make me more uncomfortable when they stare than when children do. And maybe it's also because of my profession. I work with children from 2 years
Yeah.
old to 18 years old, and the older kids, like in high school, junior high, I'll tell them my story, and some will tell me, like, Miss, you don't have to tell me why. Like, you're fine. Like, I don't care. And the little ones are like, what happened? Why do you have no, like, and then, like, we'll get all up in your face and in your space. And then a lot of the times they end up being like so kind, so helpful. And so it's all about how you raise your children and how you raise them to be to other people in general. And I think they'll apply that to anyone. And once you teach them or once you come across that situation, then that's also a teaching moment. Like, did you see them? Or you can even point it out yourself if you're scared for the day that they are approached by someone,
Yeah.
in a wheelchair with a prosthetic, and
Sure.
you're like, I know my kid, like I know what they're gonna say. And so if you want to even bring up the conversation or the topic, or you see someone with a prosthetic, like, oh, did you see their cool prosthetic? Do you know why people have prosthetics? And go into that little spiel. And there's even a good show that my son watches. It's called The Fixies. And
I haven't heard of that one.
they went through a whole episode talking about prosthetics. And I was like, what? I like whipped my head around and I told my husband, I was like, did you know this show talks about prosthetics? And even shows now are getting so inclusive. And I'm just like blown away. Even before this was our world and we weren't really around it as much, now we notice it everywhere because we're in this
Yeah.
world. But I was also in special education, so being inclusive, for wheelchairs, accessibility, things like that was always like in my mind. But now that we're in this world, like shows Rubble and Crew, one of the dogs has a prosthetic leg. Robo Gobo on Disney Channel, it's a newer show, and the girl has a prosthetic arm, a prosthetic hand. There's several episodes like on Spidey and Friends and things like that that have people in wheelchairs. The Barbie movie had a person in a wheelchair. So it's like all these shows are starting to add inclusivity and show, children starting at a young age that people are, we're going to look all different
Made
shapes,
different.
sizes,
Yeah.
colors, just all different, and accessibility, not accessible, so, or disabled and not disabled, but that doesn't mean we treat them any differently. And, that's something we try to incorporate into our parenting as well. And I actually had one of my mentors, she is also an amputee, and she said, you'll see that your kids are going to be kinder, more patient, more compassionate, more just more caring all around because of your situation now. And why you become a parent is to create better humans in this world. And that's
Yeah.
something that you're going to do even with the disability, and even more now with the
More so.
disability.
Yeah. That's a
Mhm.
beautiful byproduct.
Yes. And I'm like, okay, like I was in the hospital still. So, in that time, I really just didn't see a light out of that tunnel. And there's people who have reached out to me who are going through the same things and in the situation that I'm in right now. And it breaks my heart because I don't want this to happen to anyone. I wish it wasn't happening, and I wish it still wasn't happening. And I wish it was still something that had a cure, that wouldn't happen to especially moms who just had a baby. And that's part of, my TikTok as well, as setting spreading my story out there, is for moms to hear, for people who are expecting to hear, not because I'm trying to steer people away from having kids, not because I'm trying to instill a fear of people having kids or getting pregnant or giving birth. I want people to be educated, and I want women, especially, to be advocates for themselves. I want women to know that we're not being dramatic, we're not being I guess not pansies, but like kind of like that's
Yeah. Yeah.
what they say, like we're being big babies. We're not being big babies. We're not over dramatizing our pain or discomfort or just, being uncomfortable, anything like that. We feel things, and we're humans just like men are, and we feel pain, we feel hurt, we feel loss, grief, everything just as much as anybody else. And so if we want to advocate, if we want to ask more questions, if we want to say something is still hurting and you're not treating it, then we have a right to do so. And so that's, part of my storytelling, especially like on my TikTok or my social media, is just to show that, yes, I'm continuing life despite what happened to me, despite my traumatic event, despite having PTSD, anxiety, depression, just all these mental health issues after. But I'm still living my life. But if I could help one woman for this not to happen to, because they saw my story and they learned that they have to ask questions and advocate for themselves, and I save them, then like I'm doing more than I'm doing more than what I was, given another chance to. So I think that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to continue to put my story out there and inspire others or educate others in any way I can.
Well, I'm so glad that you are. That's
Yeah.
when I heard your story for the first time. I boo-hooed. But I had a rough postpartum with my first, and I did not advocate for myself. And listening to your story, I was like, it's heartbreaking that we feel like we don't need to take up too much space. We don't need to be too loud. We don't need to question when
Right.
it's our bodies. And if something doesn't feel right, then we have every right
Right.
to be as
Exactly.
loud as we need to be.
As
So
we need to be, right.
I really appreciate you putting yourself out there and making your beautiful videos with your beautiful
Thank
children.
you.
They are so
Aw.
cute.
Thank you.
And I'll make sure that we put your social media handles
Yes.
in the description so that everyone can go and see your beautiful family. And thank
Yes.
you so much, Christina.
No, thank you for having me. I had a great time. I hope I didn't talk too much. Yeah, I didn't even get you a chance to
I
ask
love
me
it.
anything. But if y'all have more questions, or if you get comments or have questions, don't
Would love that.
Don't
Maybe
be
we could do
afraid
a
to send
live
them my way.
episode with you. We would
Yeah.
love to do a live episode with you one day
Yeah.
so people can ask questions. That would
Yes,
be
of
wonderful.
course. Yeah, have people like phone in. I don't know how that happens, but yes.
Oh gosh, I'm the worst
We can
millennial.
like
I don't know
old
how
radio
technology
shows.
works. Yeah.
Like old radio shows where people would call in with a question but yes, and I appreciate you guys working with me in our schedule. Like I said last week,
Of
we were
course.
traveling to our parents, and with kids, like we do like 3, 4, 5 stops, and I'm like, what are we
I
gonna do?
100% understand. I 100% understand that. Well, it was so great speaking with you. Best of luck
you.
with everything, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yes, thank you. It's so great meeting you. Have a good one.
You too, Christina. Bye.
Just do your thing. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up, today's gonna be a good day.